Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Healthy Habits webinar series, which is taking place every other Thursday from June 17th through September 23rd from 12 to 12:50 p.m. We are so excited to have you all with us today and so pleased with the turnout. We have over 500 participants expected on the webinar today. I'm Julie Chaldi, Health and Wellbeing Program Manager with the Center for Work and Family Life. And it's such a pleasure to spend the next 50 minutes with all of you. A few housekeeping items. We would like to invite you all to stand if you're able and stretch any time during today's presentation. So feel free to get up, move around, shake it out. Your audio is muted to minimize any background noise until we open it up for Q&A. But feel free to use the chat function to make comments or ask questions and the Q&A function, and our presenters will assist in responding. This webinar is being recorded and will be archived for sharing on the Healthy Habits webpage that you use to register for the series. The current pandemic has disrupted our lives in so many ways. USC faculty and staff have spent the last year and more adjusting to a new norm of working, learning, and living at home. With the return to on-campus activities this fall, many of us are faced with emerging challenges to maintain our current work and personal life routines, healthy habits, schedules, and environments. Whether you'll be returning in person this fall, working a hybrid schedule, a remote schedule, or have been on campus this entire time, we want to provide you with information and motivation to create and maintain healthy habits. The series aims to support the health and well-being of our campus community by providing strategies and resources to help you navigate through the transition and recovery of pandemic life and continue or establish healthy habits that will last a lifetime. Here's a look at our 8 webinar series sessions. Today's session is on creating healthy habits for work and home, and we hope you will join us for the other sessions as well. So let's get started, creating healthy habits for home and work. Today's agenda will include planning for fitness and nutrition, managing stress and finding balance, an interactive action planning, Q&A, survey, and then a preview of the next session. So now I'd like to introduce the speakers for today. The first speaker is myself, Health and Wellbeing Program Manager with the Center for Work and Family Life. And in my role, I am working with campus partners to design a healthy campus initiative and framework to improve health and well-being of USC faculty and staff and create a healthy work environment. I joined USC 7 months ago and previously worked at UC Riverside for 12 years as the Faculty and Staff Wellness Program Manager and co-chair of UCR Healthy Campus. I've also held several leadership roles for the entire University of California system with the UC-wide Healthy Campus Network and led the UC Smoke Tobacco-Free Policy implementation. Prior to higher education, I worked as the Wellness Manager for Johnson & Johnson. I have my bachelor's in biology from UCLA and my master's in public health from UCLA. But now I'm excited to be part of the Trojan community. I have the honor of co-presenting with Patricia Grabarek, Adjunct Professor in the Department of Psychology. And I'll turn it over now to Patricia to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. So excited to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to have this conversation with all of you. As Julie mentioned, I'm an adjunct professor. I teach in the Master's of Applied Psychology program part-time. In addition to that, I run my own business called Worker Being, where I work with clients, organizations, and creating thriving work environments. And I also host a podcast called the Worker Being Podcast, where we talk about research in workplace wellness, break it down, try to kind of make it lay and accessible to everyone so that organizations, employees alike can all come in and actually make an impact on terms of how we do our work. My background in terms of education, I have my PhD in industrial organizational psychology from Penn State University. And I also got my bachelor's at UCLA, similar to Julie, but I'm excited to be part of the USC family right now. And I've spent my entire career consulting with clients in organizational psychology concepts, so really focusing on leadership and, again, building those thriving work environments where employees can be happy, satisfied, and productive. And then in the Master's of Applied Psychology program, I teach the Introduction to Organizational Psychology to our master's students. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited for this presentation.
Thank you so much, Patricia. What an impressive resume. So happy to be co-presenting with you today. So let's get started. We all know COVID-19 has disrupted our basic health maintenance and self-care for more than a year. This long pandemic has allowed people to adapt to their new normal and to become comfortable, or relatively so, at least being at home most of the time. Perhaps unsurprisingly then, many of us are feeling anxious as we look ahead to a time when we have to return to the office or to full-on campus activities, returning to once comfortable but now unfamiliar routines. So what can we do to prepare? First, it helps to plan ahead to gain a sense of control over the uncertain future. Perhaps you can visit your work wardrobe, dust off your daily planner, and look up some new recipes for lunch on the go. Second, you can look for the good in returning to on-campus work to boost hope and optimism. Are there coworkers you've missed, or routines that might be a welcome relief? Now is the time to get back to taking care of our physical and mental well-being with healthy eating, exercise, sleep relaxation practices, as well as scheduling missed preventive exams and screenings. Many of us will be dealing with a lot as we try to transition back to normal life, but we should view this as an opportunity, a new start, and a path forward towards better health and well-being overall. Some of us may have actually established healthy routines during the pandemic and are hoping to maintain them going forward. And some of us are looking to start new healthy routines with the start of fall semester. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear about your experience, and I'll be launching a poll very shortly. Let me launch that poll right now. How confident are you in maintaining healthy habits established during the pandemic? Are you very confident it's now a priority no matter what? Pretty confident, just need to make some adjustments. Somewhat confident, might need some practice and planning, and this is a good time to do that. Not too confident, can use some support and structure, or please help. So let's see, the answers are coming in. I'll just pause for a few seconds for all of you to participate in the poll. And the poll has slowed down, so I'll end poll and share results with all of you. Well, it looks like 38% of you are somewhat confident and might need some practice and planning, which is perfect. This is why we're here today. And then 28% are pretty confident, just need to make some minor adjustments. Only 6% of you are in the please help category. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this poll. Okay, so moving forward, let's talk about self-care. Self-care means taking care of yourself so that you can be healthy, you can be well, you can do your job well, can take care of others, and do the things that you need to do and accomplish in a day. If you think you've been hearing a lot about self-care, you're right. According to Google Trends, the number of searches for self-care has more than doubled since 2015. So what does self-care mean? It means checking in with yourself and asking how you're doing and what is your mind and body, what are they asking for? Some people use self-care to deal with difficult stories or news. Others just maintain their happiness from day to day with self-care. And self-care does not mean the same thing for everyone. Different people adopt different strategies and practices, and even your own practices may change over time. But when self-care is practiced, the benefits are broad and have been linked to positive health outcomes, such as reduced stress, improved immune system, increased productivity, and higher self-esteem. So what are your priorities for self-care, and what healthy habits would you like to start or continue? And this is the interactive portion where we'd love to hear from you in the chat. And we encourage you to select panelists plus all attendees so everyone can engage in the broader conversation. So tell us, what is your focus? What is your priority for self-care and healthy habits? Is it healthy eating, physical activity? Maybe you want to get more sleep. Is it giving back to the community? Or maybe it's managing stress or work-life balance, or strengthening or re-strengthening social connections. So I'll pause for a few minutes and let you all engage in the chat function.
We see a lot of variety: stress management, healthy eating, physical activity, maintaining work-life balance while returning to the office, more sleep, all of them.
all of the above.
Yeah. Creative projects help me most. Interesting. That's going to get to something I'll talk about in a second. Getting sunshine, water, healthy food, connection, meditation. A lot of really good things in here.
Great. Well, keep the chat going. We can all learn from each other. You might share something that someone hasn't thought of. Regardless of what it is, planning and scheduling is key. So consider what your new schedule might look like this fall. What will your routine look like? How will your commute be factored in? And what additional responsibilities might you have, such as having to drop off your kids before heading in for the day or starting your day? Maybe having to get up earlier to get to an earlier fitness class so then you can get to the office in time, or meal prepping to bring your lunch to work. What can you fit in your day realistically? So once you lay that all out, your schedule, your routine, think about where you can create or add in those healthy habits and practice. This is a great time to do that. Fitting and fitness and eating healthy are two areas that come up a lot. So let's do a deeper dive into these two areas. Exercise improves your physical and mental health, brain function, self-image, and anxiety levels. There's so many options to move. USC has several recreation facilities with classes, equipment, personal training. There are local gyms all over LA and studios. Free online workouts for those who might not want to go into a gym just yet. Remote personal training options, and even local walking clubs. So the opportunities are endless, and it's a great way to benefit your health and your mind. And even just getting outside gives you a boost to your mental health and productivity. So spend some time outdoors. So where can you fit in physical activity? And this is where I'll help you figure out where works best for you. And when I get asked that question, I always say the best time to exercise is when you will do it. So some of us might want to do our routine before work. It energizes us before the day. You get it in before the day gets away. You feel good the rest of the day, and you tend to make healthier choices. So wake up earlier, go to bed earlier, sign up for a class for accountability. And for those of you who might be stressed on time, maybe do your workouts at home, online classes, even walk. And always plan your workouts, your gear, your equipment, your shoes the night before. While at work or on campus, you can schedule time to be active and block out your calendar, and even enlist coworkers to join you. Walk to the rec center or start a walking club. And if anyone wants to start a walking club, let me know. After work is also a great time to decompress and de-stress and end the day in a positive way. You can commit to closing the office door or shutting down your laptop, meet a family member or workout buddy to hold yourself accountable, and then maybe consider doing workouts instead of happy hours, or both. And then, of course, mini sessions throughout the day, in between meetings, doing TV commercials, splitting up your workouts. There are so many ways to fit in activity. A note to team leaders and managers: encourage your team to take breaks and let them know that it just benefits their productivity and their well-being. So eating healthy and with nourishing foods helps you to maintain energy levels. While eating healthy may sometimes be a challenge, convenience, time, money, access, these are factors that prevent us from eating well, but it's never too late to make it a priority. Nourishment may look different for everyone, so spend some time connecting with your body and maybe your healthcare provider or a registered dietitian to figure out what works best for you. As you plan for your new routine, identify ways to create and maintain a healthy eating plan. Now that you may be working less from home and eating out more in a long commute or socializing more with coworkers at lunch or happy hour, having a game plan is really important to stay on track. And of course, preparation is key. Plan your meals in advance. So think about, what will I have for breakfast? Are there grab and go items you can eat in the car? Maybe a toasted bagel, a piece of fruit, some Greek yogurt. What do you need to create quick and healthy dinners after getting home from a long day of work? So create that shopping list and stick to it. Schedule a time to do your shopping. Sundays is normally what I prefer. And then when you get home, meal prep, wash, cook, portion out your lunch and dinners, and you can do this for the entire week or the entire day. So on the slide, I provided suggestions for breakfast, lunch, and snacks. And the key is to aim for variety, balance, and wholesome, nutritious foods with an emphasis on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and low-fat dairy for those who consume dairy. If you are eating out for breakfast or lunch, plan in advance by looking at the menu and ingredients in dishes and choose items that are whole as possible, light on sauces and dressings, or get them on the side, and practice portion control. Finally, support your team and colleagues and family members by creating a healthier eating environment. So if you are responsible for ordering food for meetings or make decisions on what is provided on campus or at home, remember to make available healthy options. And if you want more assistance in this area, feel free to reach out to myself for additional support. And then finally, before I turn it over to Patricia, I'd like to talk about that dreaded commute. I don't know about you, but traffic seems to be back with a vengeance. Many of us will be now faced with commutes that we didn't have while working remotely, or longer commutes as more workers hit the roads. Luckily, there are some great things to be productive while driving that you can implement both before and after work, or when you're in your car or public transportation. Think of your commute as precious time for yourself, where you're granted the opportunity to get things done and feel good about it. So listed on the slide are things you can do to ensure a healthier and more productive commute by car or public transportation. Try a few of these ideas and see how they work, but just be safe about your approach. I personally have missed my commute, not really, which used to be 3 hours from the South Bay to UC Riverside. But it was my time to plan, catch up on messages, lots of scribbling on a notepad, and brainstorming safely, of course. And I'm looking forward to a shorter commute to USC, although I know that 110 is probably a nightmare. So we've created a handy tip sheet with this information and more details that we'll include in the chat and also in our follow-up emails. So you have a handy guide for a healthy and productive commute wherever you may go. And with that, I will turn it over to Patricia, my co-presenter.
Thank you so much. I loved all those tips, and I love the chat that's going on the side. I think it's really great. So I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about managing stress, different ways to manage stress, and then I want to talk about some work-life balance. So the first thing I want to discuss are recovery tactics. So in the research, we know that the way you recover at the end of a day can have a big impact on your levels of exhaustion the next morning, how you're feeling the next day, how productive you can be the next day. So there are 4 things that you really want to think about when it comes to recovery, and some very specific ways to recover to help yourself moving forward. So the first thing I think is pretty self-explanatory for everyone. We need to detach from our work. So at some point in the evening, whenever that is for you, set a time where you can log off and be done, where you're not thinking about work anymore. You don't have to bother with it until the morning, where you're able to put it aside and really remove any thought as much as you can. I know it's hard to say that, don't think about work, because then all you're gonna do is think about work. But as much as you can, attempt to remove any reminders of work and anything that you're doing with work so that you can fully detach. And having that detachment actually helps you recover in the evening a lot more. If you're consistently thinking about work and you're ruminating on things that have happened or things that are coming up, then I would encourage you to start creating a plan on how you can detach. What would help you stop thinking about that? Could you make a list before you close your laptop for the day of things you have to do tomorrow, so that you're not thinking about the things you have to do tomorrow in the evening? So thinking about how you can detach from work is really critical for your recovery. And then the last 3 are actual things that are shown in the research to help with your recovery. And number 4, sneak preview, is the best actually for your recovery, but all 3 of these would work. And so think about how you can fit these into your schedule, or what is already something that you're doing that you can kind of emphasize to continue to build your recovery tactics. So relaxation activities are what we typically lean on when it comes to recovery, right? After a hard, long day, we might lay down on the couch, veg out, watch TV, and there's definitely support that that type of behavior can help you with your recovery, and sometimes it's really helpful. These passive relaxation activities like taking a bath, watching TV, relaxing, getting a massage, what have you, those things can help us rejuvenate and feel better in the moment. But I will say that there is research to support that if the only recovery tactic you use is relaxation, you're actually not going to recover as much as if you add the other two pieces. So think about how you can puzzle all these together throughout your week so that you're not always relying on your typical, I'm going to sit down on the couch and watch my favorite Netflix show approach. Social connection is really critical. We are social beings. It's one of the most important things for humans to feel well and thrive, is to have connections with other people. So that can be things like going out to dinner, as Julie mentioned, going to a workout class together, having a phone call, maybe taking a walk and chatting with your friend on the phone. Any way you can connect with people at least a few times a week can really help you recover. And in that time, try not to spend all of your time talking about work, but even if you are venting about something that happened at work, it's still extremely helpful to have those connections, to feel heard, to feel to feel connected to another person can really help us recover and fill our cup back up, right? So at the end of the day, you tend to have a depleted cup, and if we can continue to fill it up overnight, then we're able to wake up in the morning and have a full cup to go with throughout the day. Social connection is another key one. Again, not something you have to do every single day, but something you want to be sprinkling in throughout your week so that you're having those moments where you feel connected and you're able to recover. The final one, number 4, mastery, is actually the most important. So the research supports that finding mastery, which basically means finding an activity where you're learning something, is the most impactful for your recovery at the end of the day. Not necessarily learning something related to your job. So it's not, for me, it wouldn't be reading more research on workplace wellness. It would be learning a new recipe or painting, practicing painting or what have you. I saw somebody mentioned earlier that creative projects really help them in the chat. And that is a perfect example of how mastery can help. So maybe you want to really learn how to do a headstand in yoga, whatever it is, but doing something where you're moving towards a goal, where you're learning something and you're challenging yourself in a different way than you are during the day, surprisingly actually helps you recover the fastest. That feeling of achievement, that feeling of productivity towards something different outside of your work can really help fill up your cup so that the next day when you get to work, you're energized and ready to go. So those are the 4 key recovery tactics. Then I want to talk a little bit about some things that we know in the research from managing stress. If you can move to the next slide. So in addition to those tactics, these 5 areas are things we also need to be considering. And I do want to pause and say that we've talked about self-care, and it's really important to know that not everything is going to always work for everybody all the time. And you want to be mindful, which is funny, the first one's mindfulness, but you want to be mindful that you're not overloading your plate with too many self-care items. Try things, practice them, see what you like. It's okay if you try something and you don't like it, move on. It's not a big deal if you don't do all of these 5 things all the time. There's some that I think you should always do, but things like mindfulness and gratitude here on the list are ones that research supports it. They can be very helpful, but it doesn't mean that every single person needs to be practicing mindfulness or needs to be adding specific gratitude journaling to their day. But think about how you can use all these research-backed approaches and find what works best for you. It's very individual as to how you can manage your own stress. So the first one, as I've already talked about, was mindfulness. It can be as short as 1 minute in order to have an impact on exhaustion. So there have been some studies that look at different lengths of time, both for mindfulness and for breaks, to see how much of that do you need. Do you need to be doing a 10-minute meditation, an hour-long meditation, 1 minute? And there's research to support that 1 minute of mindfulness, so taking 1 minute to just breathe, focus yourself, get back into the present, can help you reduce your exhaustion during the day. Same thing with breaks. Breaks don't have to be long. We know they're very important. Having breaks throughout the day so that you kind of remove your head from that workspace for a minute can be extremely helpful. And the important thing about breaks is fully disconnecting. So it's not taking 5 minutes to then shift to a different area. It's not taking 5 minutes to then, talk to a colleague about a specific work task. It's taking 5 minutes to disconnect from work. So maybe it's, texting your sister about some plans you have this weekend, or maybe it's taking a quick walk around the building. Whatever that is, taking only 5 minutes, which is pretty short, can actually help rejuvenate and bring you to a more engaged state, a more exhilarated state versus exhausted. So it helps fill your cup up like a teeny bit throughout the day, right? As we're continuing to deplete that cup throughout the day, if you add in little breaks, you're going to slow that depletion, or maybe add a little bit more water back in so that you've got more to work with towards the end of the day. The next piece is sleep. I'm sure everyone's heard about sleep all the time. People talk about sleep and how important it is. The really critical thing that we find in the research is logging off from work-related activities at least an hour, preferably 2 hours before bed. So this really links to that detachment piece and the recovery tactics. They're pretty related. If you can just not look at work emails after a certain hour, you're going to bed at 10, don't look at them after 8. Set a hard time for yourself. Maybe turn off notifications on your phone if your emails go that way. Whatever you need to do to get yourself removed from work will really help you sleep, because as I mentioned, it's not that easy to just detach yourself from work and say, I'm going to stop thinking about work today, right now, at this moment. But if you give yourself 2 hours, you can start to fade out of that work mindset, so that by the time you go to sleep, you're actually going to not be ruminating and having that hard time falling asleep where you're thinking about what's coming next because you never really disconnected from work. So make sure you're taking that time to disconnect so that you can get the sleep that you need. The next one is gratitude. And I've already mentioned some people, like with mindfulness and gratitude, it's totally up to you, see what works for you. But gratitude can take a lot of different forms. And there's a lot of different ways that has been shown in the research can really help you in terms of your exhaustion and how you're feeling throughout the day. So there's the typical things you've probably heard of, like writing in a gratitude journal, maybe once a week or every day, 3 things that you're grateful for. But we actually see that gratitude breaks, so if you want to combine 2 of these, can be extremely helpful. So going and thanking a colleague for something that they did. So you're now making a social connection, you're expressing gratitude, and you're taking a break from your tasks. That is a win-win-win all over to help you reduce your exhaustion. So when it comes to gratitude, think of different ways that you can be practicing gratitude and see what works for you. I know some colleagues that on Fridays will sit down and send little thank you notes to people within their teams that they are grateful for and things that they've done that week, which then helps to build this kind of social support network too, right? So now you've got gratitude, you've got people supporting you within the workplace. I know others that really like to spend that journaling time, which is also very impactful. And actually mindfulness and gratitude work really well together, because we know that the more mindful you are, the more present you are in the moment, the more likely you are to recognize what to be grateful for within your environment, within your work environment. So if you're able to do a little bit of all those things, you're going to be able to see a reduction in your exhaustion overall. And the consistency is the key piece. So as I mentioned, if you end up trying a gratitude journal and you don't like it so much, don't worry about it. Scrap that, try something else. Try a gratitude break. Try practicing mindfulness and recognizing what you can be grateful for. Whatever that looks like for you is totally fine. Give yourself grace as you're figuring out what techniques are going to be the most impactful for you. But I encourage you to just try what you can. And the final thing is vacation time. Vacation time is so important. We know that it's really difficult for people to disconnect 100%, even over a weekend, right? Because as we're leading out of the week, we're still thinking about work. On Sunday, we're starting to think about what's coming next. So you really only have one day maybe where you're not thinking about work that much. taking vacation time can really help you rejuvenate, re-energize moving forward. But the thing that's really important, and I see Bridget posted that taking a week vacation can be stressful, right? Because being disconnected, what else is going on? Are you missing something? There isn't a good time to take time off. That's very true. But if you're able to disconnect, your benefits are big. So what I recommend is actually prepping for your vacation, which is kind of maybe a little bit of a challenge, right? As you're leading up to vacation, adding more stress to your plate can be hard. But if you can plan your vacation effectively, meaning you've addressed everything that you need to address before you leave, you have a plan for how you're going to re-enter into work. So what I recommend is the first day back, if you're able to block your first half day with no meetings, nothing, just going through your email and being able to have that time to slowly find your way back in can be really helpful. So try to ease yourself back in so that you're retaining the benefits from vacation. Because yeah, as Anna just said, stressful before and after vacation. If you're coming back and it's super stressful, that's not helpful. What you need to do is think about how you can ease yourself back in. So prep for that ease, and then support each other, support your colleagues. If they're gone, try to, play goalie and keep those problems away from their email and inbox so that they're able to actually disconnect and then have them return the favor, right? You don't want someone to get a ton of pings in their email. And maybe if they're, it's very tempting to look back. And if you see you've got a ton, you're going to feel more stressed. But if you have team members that can help you and can help support you and kind of create an environment where you're playing goalie for each other, I think that can really be a great way to make it easier to come back and reap the full benefit of that vacation. I see some good comments here. Can't travel vacations, have opted to work half days. That way I feel like I'm taking time off. Yeah, there's actually been a lot of people that have been doing these like partial days off. I don't know of a lot of research yet in that, but I think that if it allows you to disconnect more fully, then I would assume doing those recovery activities, you would actually be feeling better anyways. So it's not necessarily about the length of time of vacation or time off, it's how it's used that's most important. And, it's easier to disconnect when you have a whole week or 2 weeks where you're off somewhere else and not thinking about it. But if you're able to do that recovery in a half day off, that's great too. All right, I'm gonna move to the next slide. So in terms of balance, we talked a lot about managing stress and how do you balance all of that and everything that you want to fit into your life. And work-life balance is such a hot topic, right? There's so many things that people want to do. How do you balance work, your personal life, everything that you want to do going on? I always want to reiterate that work-life balance is very individual. So what works for you is not going to work for your friend. It's not going to work for your spouse or your child. It's your own thing that works for you, and it works for you today because your balance may change over time. So we know that how people prioritize things changes based on what's going on in their life. So if you maybe are working more this time of your life, this phase of your life, and you're okay with that, the balance doesn't have to be 50-50 or a perfect split between work and life, right? It can be whichever way you want to lean. So thinking about balance for yourself is critical as you're going through this wellness journey and figuring out what you want to be adding into your life or moving from your life to build the balance that's best for you. One really interesting concept around work-life balance is this idea of being an integrator versus a segmenter. So I'm going to read the descriptions of both, and I want you to think about which one are you? Do you know that if you fall into more of an integrator phase or segmenter phase? So it's two different ways of managing work and life that are pretty different. Some people might fall in the middle, and that's fine too. So if you see yourself kind of being a little bit of both, that's totally normal. But basically, there's different ways you should be approaching your work-life balance based on which of these two you are. So an integrator is someone that really likes to integrate work and life throughout the day, right? They don't need boundaries that are strict. They might be somebody that will do laundry, then get in a call, then do some writing, then go and make lunch, and then come back and do another call and go work out, and then just keep kind of bouncing between work and life back and forth. There's no strict work hours or life hours. It's just fitting things in the way that they really want it to be. You don't mind being interrupted when you're doing your work with something that has to do with your life, and vice versa. You're not necessarily someone that has to be fully immersed in your own domain. So I'm seeing that some people are saying they're integrators for sure. I will say I've noticed that in academic settings there seem to be a lot of integrators, but that's not a data point that I actually have, but that's just been my experience so far. But I think there's also a bit of combo of both, because segmenters are people that actually like those strict boundaries. So they want it when they go to work, they're working, that's what they want to focus on. And then when they're done with work, they don't want to think about it again. They want to go on and do their life things, right? They don't like the interruption between the two. They really like to immerse themselves in one domain of their life, and not the other at that time. So as you can imagine, because people fall into these two different camps, it's pretty easy to see where there might be conflict, right? Where an integrator and a segmenter may have some difficulties working together or making sure that they're supporting each other and creating the balance that they need. So what I always recommend when you're thinking about work-life balance and how you work and interact with others is thinking about how you can basically everyone needs to be working towards what a segmenter needs, meaning integrators can work however they want, but should not be bombarding segmenters with emails at night because the segmenter is done for the day. So if we can all get into an agreement in your teams to function in such a way that you're only sending emails during a basic work block and scheduling calls during a basic work block, then you're actually helping everybody because the segmenters will not be bombarded. And then that gives the integrators flexibility too, because in the evening they can still do whatever they want, but they're not being forced into one bucket or the other. At the same time, segmenters need to be understanding of integrators, where they might be taking an hour or 2 or 3 off in the middle of the day to do something else and then coming back later. So it's understanding the balance between how these two work together that can make a really effective team, and not forcing anyone to do one of these styles, right? So for leaders on the call, really understanding your team members and not sending them emails late at night if you're an integrator, letting them be segmenters, and vice versa. I see sending emails but not requiring a response. Yes, I love when people do that. You can also schedule your email so they send at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. So even if you're writing it at 7 p.m., you can schedule it for later, right? I know that some messaging platforms have that too, like on Slack or Teams and different places, you can have it scheduled to send a message later instead of in the moment. So then you're working and respecting each other's boundaries, but still working the way that you want to work. The other thing that I would call out though, the one problem that integrators sometimes get themselves into is that because they're comfortable bouncing around work and life, they might work too late. So there's still the caveat that even if you don't mind working weird hours, that you should disconnect at least 2 hours before the end of your day to give yourself some time to recover. Ideally, you can add a little bit more than just 2 hours, but having a strict timeline still as an integrator is really important to give you that recovery that you need. So I'm going to encourage all the integrators that I see out there that you really should focus on that as well. And I see some people would like to be segmenters, which I think is really interesting. Is it because I'm wondering if people that are saying want to be segmenters, is it because you actually prefer to work that way, but your job is not currently letting you? Or is it that in theory, you like the idea of being a segmenter? Because I think we tend to have a preference. So correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but if you would like to be a segmenter, think about what you can do in your day and how you interact with your team members to get them to understand what your needs are. So it's really important for these two groups to communicate as much as possible, so that you're able to disconnect if you can. It can be really tough for segmenters out there, especially with all the technology that we have access to. So trying to create really strict boundaries, having an away message when you're logged off that you're done with the day, that can help sometimes. Just communicating clearly with your team is my first tip. But if the team isn't conducive, if the workload isn't conducive, then obviously it's out of your hands and it's time for you to be hope, see if you have supportive leaders to move some of those things out of your way so you can segment effectively. Send them this recording and tell them, hey, I'm a segmenter and this is not good for my health and my productivity if I have to work like an integrator all the time. So make sure that if you're able to have those conversations, try to have those conversations as much as you can. And I think I am now getting close to time. I want to make sure we have time for questions. So we're going to move to the next slide. Based on everything that we've talked about so far today, love for you to write down 3 things you can start doing today for this week. Put it in the chat so we can all, see each other's ideas and have conversation around it. It's really important to leave something like this. So this session and all the other sessions that you're going to attend for this series, to leave with specific actions. Otherwise, you're going to hear it, you're going to think these ideas are great, or you're interested in something, and then you never get back to it. So put it in your calendar, block 2 minutes in your calendar tomorrow to create a plan for how you're going to incorporate more healthy eating, or block a little bit of time early next week to think about how you want to discuss with your leader about why being a segmenter impacts you and how you want to implement some changes in the team. Whatever it is, try to put a couple of things that you think would be useful for you that you want to try. And again, if you try and it doesn't go so well, that's okay too. And you can try again later. We have a second poll here. And Julie, I'll let you launch that just to see how confident you're feeling now after this session in terms of maintaining those healthy habits.
Thank you, Patricia. We're getting some action in the chat, which is great. Some people are listing things like meal prepping, shutting down 1 to 2 hours before going to bed, shopping for healthy snacks, making a plan for healthy meals, exercising, planning social activities. So keep these ideas coming. This is great. This is wonderful. And while you're chatting, we just want to do one more poll. We're going to ask you basically the same question and see if maybe you've changed in any way during today's presentation in terms of how confident you are now in maintaining healthy habits established during the pandemic. So I'm going to launch the poll now and let us know, are you still pretty confident that your self-care and healthy habits are going to be a priority no matter what? Are you pretty confident and just need to make some adjustments, maybe utilize all the information you've learned today and create an action plan? Are you somewhat confident and want to use this time to practice some of the things you've heard today? Or not too confident, can use some support and structure? And I think it's great. I'm looking at the chat and seeing a lot of people wanting to get together to socially connect or to be more active or to walk together. So having that structure is really important. Or are you in the category, please help, I need more time with Julie and Patricia? So let's see what the poll is looking like right now.
I'm really liking some of the things I'm seeing too. I see some people doing mastery, like gardening, a lot of disconnect, practice gratitude. I love practicing those thankful breaks. These are great.
Yeah, exactly. So sharing the results, it looks like 44% now are pretty confident, just need to make some adjustments. So I think during this 50 minutes, we've seen a slight movement from our audience being somewhat confident to now being pretty confident. So that's great. There's so many great strategies that you've heard today from both of us. And we really, really want to encourage you to practice and plan ahead. So let me stop sharing the results.
Duolingo Spanish app. That's a fun one for mastery. I like that. I see a question in the Q&A that I want to address.
Sure.
So someone mentioned that, they want to take vacation days. They haven't in a very long time, but they're worried it's going to reflect poorly on the commitment to the job. And one, I feel for you. I empathize. That is a really hard position to be in. I will tell you, and this is hard because I don't know your relationship with your leader, but taking vacation, it sets you up to be able to be more effective later. So it's taking care of yourself like kind of when you hear about people talk about like mothers need to take care of themselves, right? So you can show up and be the best mother. It's the same thing as employees. You need to take care of yourself so you can show up and be the best employee. So if there's any way you're able to communicate that with your leader or your leader's leader to start to create that dialogue, that taking a vacation isn't because you don't care about your job, but taking a vacation is because you need to refresh and take care of yourself so that you can come in and be that best performer. There's so much research that supports that specific concept, right? That if you're not rested, if you're burnt out, you're not going to be performing well. If you're not a happy employee, right? If you're not satisfied in your job, then that's the same problem. You're going to not be doing as well. So maybe collecting some resources and making the argument can help you. If your supervisor always seems to be working, I think it's trying to have that dialogue if you're able to. It's really hard, again, if you can't have those open conversations, and then it might be useful to look to your peers or peer managers of your supervisor, see if there's anyone that can help you start creating the environment that's going to be more conducive for others. And sometimes people like to just seem busy. They may not actually be working as much. And this is where the integrator segmenter problem can sometimes come into play. And so people are working all sorts of weird hours. Like, how productive are they really being? The research actually shows that if you're working these, 20-hour days, you're not actually being as productive as somebody that just really focuses in 8 hours. So we need to be mindful of how we're using our time and understanding that time isn't being busy and working a lot doesn't actually usually mean that you're more productive. But again, if it's your supervisor, that's really tough. So HR might be a good resource to have those conversations if you're able to, just to try to move the needle there, because you should be able to take breaks and vacations. I'm probably stepping out of line, so I'll leave it to HR to address, but there probably needs to be more clear policies or boundaries so that people know how to do that.
Great. Thank you so much for addressing that, Patricia. And I just wanted to mention there were so many strategies today that we've created a self-care action plan template that we'll drop in the chat and also send in the follow-up email so you can put your thoughts down and start thinking about, okay, what are my goals? What are my action plans? Who do I need to talk to? How can I prepare to make some of these things happen? So look for that self-care action plan template. And I just want to close with one last thing before we go into Q&A, and feel free to start putting your questions in the chat. Just remember, planning and developing habits you would like to maintain as you transition back to campus, whether it be quiet morning walk routines, healthy snacking, detoxing with your social media, connection, balance, relaxation, exercise, whatever it is, consider what has benefited you so far in your overall well-being and make that non-negotiable. So I just wanted to end with that and then open it up with our last 2 or 3 minutes or so with Q&A.
So I see a few other questions about any tips for vacation when you can't really afford to go anywhere but don't want to stare at the same walls. Oof, that's a good one. Staycations can be really good, but if you're coming back home and you're still feeling like you need more than that, it can be a little challenging. So I would just say stay out as long as you can. Try to plan time and like activities. I know it's sometimes things are opened up again, but thinking about how you can structure your day so that when you come home, it's you take a shower, you go to bed, and you're done, right? So if you're able to like keep yourself engaged, even if it's just sitting outside in a park for hours on end reading a book, I think can really help. And we do know that nature has a lot of benefits from like a rejuvenation and reducing burnout approach. So that would be something to think about, is like, how much time can you spend outside?
Here's another question, Patricia, maybe you can answer. How can you plan day to rest when you care for elderly parents at home and no one else is there to help out?
Oh, these are really hard questions. And I, again, empathize with your situation. I think see what social support you have. So if you have no one to help out, meaning like you don't have siblings or like formal support, try to see if there's anybody that you can barter with in your life. Like, do you have a friend that can maybe step in and help you? And then you step in and help them for something else? Is there a way that you can use the people around you to help you out and give you a little bit of space? Obviously, I don't know your specific situation, but seeing if there's even a conversation with your parents to figure out like where there might be areas that you could step back that they have other options for. They have friends or support as well. So maybe having an open conversation that you need a little bit of a break with your parents and seeing what you're able to do with that.
Great. And then just a couple of comments I wanted to make for some of the questions coming in. I saw a lot of comments about separation anxiety from your pets. So we are putting together a handout on how to address that we can share out with the campus community when that's ready. And then also setting up your home workspace to be more productive. I believe our session number 4 will be addressing that. So make sure you join us because it'll be all about safety and ergonomics. With that, we are out of time. I want to be mindful of time. If you did ask a question and we have your email, we'll do our best to respond to you. I do want to share that we will be sending out a copy of this presentation, so you have that, as well as a survey for all of you to fill out to give us feedback. And then one last thing before we close is to join us for our next session, number 3, on July 15th, focused on family care resources and support, featuring an expert panel of Jessica Ayala and James Nicholas from the Center for Work and Family Life, Darby Saxby, Associate Professor in Psychology and Director of the Center for Changing Family, and Olivia Sanchez, Child Care Program Administrator in HR. We hope to see you all there. Thank you and have a healthy day, everyone.